Jai Hind, dear children. Welcome to today's science class. Hope you all enjoyed Onam safely at home. Last class, we have discussed about the processing of wool. Now, in this part, we can learn about the processing of silk threads from silk moth. All of you have seen silk clothes, right? You may be having silk dress. Your mother, your grandmother may be having different types of silk sarees. All these silk sarees are woven from silk threads. Silk is a very important natural fiber. You all know that silk is obtained from silkworm. Okay. So, in this chapter, we can study about the processing of silk threads from the silkworm. Now, before going to the processing of silk threads, we can study about the life cycle of silk moth. The lifespan of silkworm is only about 2 months. The life cycle of silk moth has 4 stages. The first stage is the egg. The second stage is the egg develops into caterpillar. And then the caterpillar develops into the pupa. And this pupa develops into moth. The female silk moth lay hundreds of eggs at a time. They usually lay eggs on the leaves. Inside the egg, the organism grows, and when it reaches to the larval stage, it hatches out of the egg. It takes almost 30 days for the eggs to hatch. This larval stage is called as caterpillar or silkworm. The caterpillar feeds on leaves. The caterpillar feeds on leaves for almost 25 to 30 days. Now the caterpillar is ready to enter the next stage of its life called pupa. It first weaves a net to hold itself. Then it swings its head from side to side in the form of shape of 8. While doing this, it secretes a protein called sericin from the opening under the worm's mouth. And this, when exposed to air, hardens and becomes silk fibers. The spinning of cocoon takes about 8 days. And now the caterpillar completely covers itself by the silk fibers and turns into the next stage of its life cycle called pupa. Further development of pupa continues inside the cocoon and develops into a moth. This moth again lay eggs, and the life cycle continues like this. The silk fibers are obtained from this cocoon. The silk fibers produced from this cocoon is soft, lustrous and elastic, and the silk threads are as strong as steel wire. There are different varieties of silk moth, and the silk fibers they produce is also different in texture. So there are different varieties of silk. Mulberry silk, tussar silk, moga silk, kosa silk, etc. are of commercially important. The most common silk moth is the mulberry silk moth. The silk fibers produced from the cocoon of mulberry moth is soft, lustrous and elastic and can be dyed in beautiful colors. For obtaining the cocoon in large scale, the silk moth are reared. So, the rearing of silk moth for obtaining the cocoon made of silk fibers is called as sericulture. Sericulture is a very old occupation in India. India produces plenty of silk on commercial scale. In India, women are involved very much in the silk production and contribute a lot to the nation's economy. Now, we can discuss about the discovery of silk.
According to an old Chinese legend, silk was discovered by a Chinese empress. She found some white worms eating up the leaves of the mulberry trees in her garden. She noticed that worms were spinning shiny cocoons around them. She collected some of those cocoons. Accidentally, one of the cocoons dropped into her cup of tea. She noticed that the cocoon was actually made from a long thread that was both strong and soft. In this way, the fiber of silk was discovered, but Chinese guarded the secret of silk for over 1,000 years. Afterwards, traders and travelers introduced silk to various parts of the world. Silk was introduced in India about 1900 years ago. The story of its introduction is related to a Chinese princess who married an Indian prince. She was very fond of silk fabric and therefore she brought silkworm eggs to India in her headdress and fed them with the leaves of Indian mulberry trees, initiating the silk production in India. Currently, world's production of silk is estimated to be around 1,25,000 metric tons per year. China holds top position with production of about 80% of the world's silk. India is also a leading producer, accounting for 10% of the world production. India is the world's second largest producer and consumer of silk and its products.
Now, let us learn the processing of silk threads from cocoon. For obtaining the silk in large scale, moths are reared and their cocoons are collected to get the silk threads. The female moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. The eggs are stored carefully and sold to silkworm farmers. The farmers keep eggs under hygienic condition and provide suitable temperature and humidity. The eggs are warmed to a suitable temperature for the larvae to hatch from the egg. The mulberry leaves are used for feeding the larvae. The silkworms are placed on bamboo trays in which a layer of mulberry leaf is placed. The silkworm feeds on mulberry leaves continuously day and night. Feeding period is almost 6 weeks. After 25 to 30 days, it attains a lot of weight than its initial stage. The caterpillars are now moved to a tiny chambers of bamboo tray to spin cocoons. Small racks are there in the tray to which cocoons get attached. Spinning of cocoon takes about 8 days. The silkworm covers itself with these fibers, and when the cocoon is completed, it sleeps for 15 to 20 days. Now, these cocoons are collected for the processing of silk threads. This is how rearing of silkworm is done. Next is the processing of silk fiber. A pile or heap of cocoon is used for obtaining silk fibers. The cocoons are kept under the sun or boiled or exposed to steam, and the silk fibers are separate out. The process of taking out threads from the cocoon for making silk fiber is called as reeling of silk. Unwinding the threads or fibers of silk from cocoon is done by special machines. The silk fibers are then spun into silk threads, which are woven into silk clothes by the weavers. The silk threads are now dyed in different colors. About 5,500 silkworms are required to produce about 1 kilo of raw silk. That is, about 3,000 cocoons are needed to make 1 yard of silk cloth. That is why silk cloth are so expensive. Now, let us recollect the contents discussed today. We have discussed life cycle of silk moth, discovery of silk, rearing of silk moth, and the processing of silk threads. I hope all of you understood the contents discussed today. Now read the textbook thoroughly 2 or 3 times and prepare the notes. Okay, thank you.